guys. Welcome to another installment of Fragments of Silicon. I'm your host, Adam. Joining me, as always, are Petty and Golix. So we're going to do a bit of fast forwarding because we had some technical problems before the show began.
Things are scuffed as ever, as you love it here at Fragments of Silicon. I'm going to cry in the corner.
I'm like, yeah, don't sell it shortly. You just didn't check all the connections, let's say.
Yeah.
Anyway, so we're going to start out with the interview because we lost about nearly 20 minutes of record time. So with that in mind, we will move to the interview portion with Kasey Ozymy of Starseed Games.
Pretty close. It's Ozymy.
Ozymy, okay.
Yeah. Nobody gets it right, so you're fine.
Okay, fair enough. Right. So, how are you doing this week, or how are you doing today?
I'm doing all right. Just busy.
We can relate. Right. So, how we like to get started is like to get to know the people behind the games, the studio, and all that business. And we begin with this particular question. What got you interested in video games, both on a personal and a professional level?
Personal, I mean, I guess I'd I'd go back to when I was like 5 or something. My older brother just playing, NES games. So especially interested in like RPGs. So like when you played Final Fantasy, for instance, I was really interested in that, and played it a little bit, when I was super young, but I don't think I got very far. But yeah, pretty much just watching him play, and then by the time Super Nintendo came out, I got my own. Played quite a bit up until grad school. That's when I was like, I couldn't really play many video games then. But soon after that, I got my degree in creative writing. So I didn't know if I was specifically. I always had in the back of my mind that I was gonna try to parlay that into a career in writing for video games. So I mean, just from my whatever personal interest in games. But yeah, I was also got really into music around that time. I tried to start a band. It kind of fell through. And in my free time, I started working in RPG Maker. So I kind of got involved in that community and built my skills up. And eventually I just sort of I kept taking on more responsibilities until I was just kind of handling everything. So that's kind of how I got into it.
And so, at what point did you make the leap from just toying around from RPG Maker into making actual games that you sell for actual money?
Yeah, that was. Let's see, that would have been. Let's see, God. 8 years ago or so, and I was just into like I said, I was in that RPG Maker scene, and I hope was to get other people sort of on board, my ship. Like I was gonna be like, let me show you how good my writing is, my music or whatever, and then kind of build a team. And instead, I just kind of kept accruing skills, and then I was just looking at what I could do at that point. I was like, why don't I just do it all myself? So it was my first game. It's called Jimmy and the Pulsating Math, or my first commercial game. But I just made the leap. Just it was done in RPG Maker, so I was just using all the skills that I'd kind of developed over there, and I just thought I could really, make something good enough. So that's how I made the leap.
And do you feel you accomplished that task in Jimmy and the Pulsating Mass?
Yeah, I mean, I had to, like, since it was on an RPG Maker, there's just sort of like, corners you have to cut, and, I was also facing my own inabilities. So, dealing with like art specific, like art, I just, I'm not a great artist, like a visual artist. So, if I were like to look at that game, I'd be like, that wasn't, that wasn't as good as I would have wanted it to be, But I mean, I'm really proud of that game, and I'm actually working on it again now to do a big update for it. But I think that it was, it's definitely like it sold well enough, to, I think, justify my existence. Like I've been living off of it for, about 5 years now. So I mean, financially, I would say I was validated. I mean, I'm not a millionaire or anything. I got scrape by money, but that's enough to keep working on stuff. My next game, Hymn to the Earless God, I have an actual team, so just way higher production values all around. So more validation, I guess, but, as things get more complex. But I feel like I'm a legit game at this point.
Like, understandable. I know there are those out there who struggle with the imposter syndrome.
Yeah, for sure.
And so, before we get into the details of Hymn to the Earless God, we should probably dig in more with Jimmy and the Pulsating Mask. First of all, what is this game? Who's Jimmy and what is the Pulsating Masks and what is the relationship? Those kind of things.
Yeah. I mean, like, you gotta play the game to find out. But I don't like getting like into too many specifics because it's a dream exploration game at its core. So a lot of it is inferred from the like a lot of the specifics are inferred. But I mean, Jimmy is an 8-year-old boy, and like the core of the game is you're exploring his dreams, and so that just all of his insecurities and just the issues that he deals with, and his relationship with his family are what's at the core of the game. And the Pulsating Mass is an alien entity that sort of worked its way into the dream and is actively destroying it. That's my whatever elevator pitch.
Fair enough. And I'm seeing here that this was influenced by a hodgepodge of very well-known 16-bit RPGs, Earthbound, Final Fantasy V, Breath of Fire, etc. And of course, since it's an RPG Maker game, I think it's required by law to have some sort of influence by Ozymy.
Yeah, well, I mean, specifically, I would say the main idea of Jimmy, the thrust behind his design is to find some halfway point between Yume-Nikki dream exploration style games and traditional RPGs. So it's a traditional RPG, but you can go off the beaten path, and exploration can get a little non-linear, which generally sort of becomes a thing in terms of just optional dungeons that you can go into, optional areas. There's like a lot of optional areas.
As a good role-playing game should have, I suppose.
Yeah, I personally love that kind of thing. So, there was an easy decision to kind of, try to go with that.
Oh, yeah. That's the balance of, I don't know if it's tradition versus more modern schools of game design. Those that put emphasis on, actual mechanics of combat, leveling up, equipment, and those that are much more interested in themes and
I mean, one of the biggest things for RPG type games is, okay, so you're making an RPG. Are you going to include random encounters, which are very traditional and kind of convenient as a way of scaling your party's power level, but also can kind of be a huge pain in the butt? Or are you going to go for another method?
Yeah, and Jimmy is it uses random encounters, but it has. I don't know if y'all have played are familiar with like Wild Arms is how they handle random encounters. But it's similar to that, but it essentially as you're traveling through an area, like exclamation points will appear above your head, and if it's a red exclamation point, you just immediately go into an encounter. If it's a green exclamation point, you can cancel out of it, and that's built on if you're too high of a level for the area. So if you get lost and you over level, then you'll be able to skip encounters very easily.
Yeah, Earthbound also did a variation of that, if I'm recalling correctly. Like, at any rate, I should ask, what are you updating with Jimmy and the Pulsating Mass? Is it like mechanics? Is it art? Console ports?
Yeah, well, it's you got it there at the end. We're planning some console ports, and I'm hesitant to be like, this is for sure happening, because shit can happen. Like the deal could fall through because it's at some level it's out of my hands because I'm working with a producer. But I thought I should go back and add some stuff to make it a bit more interesting for people who might want to buy it a second time on a console. So the big thing I'm adding is I'm adding a hard mode, which is so like a lot of hard modes in RPGs just kind of crank up stats, So what I'm doing is I'm having alternate enemy behavior. So it kind of like it's getting like really in depth. So it's like there's different ads that I'm including in some fights, for instance, or some fights I'm adding like second forms to, and every just sort of like enemy behavior list has like some modifications to it. So it's a pretty involved hard mode, which I hope people will appreciate. And then I'm also wanting to get a couple more levels in there, optional levels, which I think I'll be able to do, but it depends on timing.
And are these additions being squarely aimed at the console versions, or will they be included with the PC version as well?
It'll be updated. Like I'm planning on doing probably like a 3-month fuse on it. So like before I update the PC version. So doing having it on Switch and PlayStation, etc., and then 3 months later updating.
So, like, outside of these updates, I'm getting the sense that the actual porting duties are being handled externally. Is that the case?
Correct.
Like, can you talk about who's handling the ports at this time, or is that still under wraps?
I guess I'm gonna. I don't think it would be under wraps, but the company that I'm working with is like a new company, and I don't know if they've announced that they exist yet. So I guess I'll hold off on that.
Probably for the best. We found that in general, if you don't know if you're supposed to speak on things, it's best not to.
Right. Yeah.
Anyway, so yeah, that is Jimmy and the Pulsating Mass. I'm sure we could go ever deeper into like the themes and whatnot there, but you are also making a new game, or I suppose a potential game, given that there's a Kickstarter attached in Hymn to the Earless God.
Right. So the Kickstarter is over. We it was successful. We made about somewhere around 130,000 on it. So so our goal was 120. So we just overshot it, and that's basically just like money for the art is what that covered, which is all we wanted. And I'm glad we hit it. So the game is going to be a thing. Like I would have made it work, in one way or the other, kind of regardless. But now it'll look pretty as well, Right. So that is what what I am would like to be actively working on. But we'll be actively working on hopefully starting next year. Get back to it.
Indeed, and if you've been watching the stream, you can see that the demo has been playing in the background, which is, I suppose, a vertical slice of what this game is supposed to be. Because it's about an hour long. If you play through it, and I suppose my question here is, how representative is this demo of what you envision the game to be at completion?
So I think that the demo gets like a few things across really well. Like it gets the tone of the game across, and it's also the basic mechanics of the combat. It gets across. So or the general flow of combat. Obviously, as the game progresses, there are like a lot of wrenches that get thrown into the combat. So it's very like the levels that are in the game are very early in the demo are very early in the full game. So, but I think it gets the gist across. There'll be more mechanics. Like there's no shops in the demo, for instance. Like. So there's like just a lot of systems like that aren't included in the demo, but I felt like a good representation of the general gameplay.
Okay, fair enough. And I wasn't expecting everything to be introduced up front, so to speak.
Right.
But especially since this is just showcasing. What's the character's name?
There's two characters that you can play as in the demo. So Pox is one. Pox the Vile. He's probably the one. He's the one that the character selection screen like defaults to. So that's probably who you're thinking. And then there's also another character named Capella who's playable.
And are there any differences between the two of them?
There's a lot. Character-wise, they're totally different. Pox is essentially is sort of a representative of survival of the fittest. He's just like all he cares about is eating things and growing. His whole society is built around survival of the fittest. So he's sort of the runt. So he's constantly trying to, position himself above everyone else. And then Capella is the only character on the planet that has empathy. She's like the last, person of her tribe. And she is in a religious sect that is a little culty. They have completely different storylines and personalities, and then like mechanically they are sort of like representative of that. So Pox is since he's a runt, he's not particularly strong, but he is a physical attacker, and then Capella healer,
Mm-hmm. And is that something you're looking to have for the main game? this 2-story setup, or is this more a choose your protagonist? Like, I'm not sure if you can reveal this or anything. Like, do you see the 2 stories intersecting?
Okay, so there's actually four main characters. So you can choose between one of 4 different characters. There's just 2 represented in the demo.
Okay.
They have independent stories, and so basically how the structure of the game works is you play the first half of each character's story, and then it bottlenecks, and you choose who you want to play the rest of the game as. They definitely do intersect, and there's don't always get along.
Good to know. Kind of reminds me of, say, the Saga Frontier or Octopath Traveler.
Yeah, definitely Saga is an inspiration. So I can see this.
Like, and I suppose we should talk a bit about the combat system that's going on here, because it's certainly something that stands out. Because you've been paying attention to the demo here, it's been playing out a bit in the sense that a key mechanic for him is I'm not sure what you would call it exactly, the devouring system. Is, you start, at least with Pox here, you start out with low health and you gain it by devouring your foes. Because there seems to be a lack of healing items, at least in the demo. Is that another thing that's going to carry over to the main game?
So one of the big inspirations for this game was a game called Paladin's Quest on Super Nintendo. And then
I've actually played that.
Oh yeah, and then there's a Linus. It's called Linus in Japan. There's the sequel's Linus 2. You played that one, but
it's a very strange RPG.
Yeah. So just sort of like the main thing I'm pulling from that is you're in a world that's openly hostile, right, to you. But part of that is I wanted to just kind of take those ideas further, and that's kind of how the devouring mechanic came to be. But another thing I took from there is so in Paladin's Quest, you don't have healing magic or anything. You have everyone has like a belt.
A bottle belt.
Yeah, the bottle belts, right? So it's similar here, where you have a limited supply of healing potions, and you'll see this on Capella's game. So basically, everyone innately will be able to have 5 healing potions, and each potion heals 25%. And then you can mix in different ingredients to make a more potent potion. So it's like a combination of having like individualized healing, like an individualized healing option, but then it's like a collective, bag of like items that affect that. The idea being like in this world, everyone is too selfish to share the actual healing, so you can only heal yourself with your items. But you can, but then I still wanted to have some more, variance in like healing capabilities. So that's where these like ingredients and the whole potion system sort of like came from that. So Pox just doesn't start with it. His whole deal is he's just like at the beginning of his game, he's just sort of at rock bottom. So he gets thrown into this pit and has nothing. And I really wanted to, and very little health, and he really wanted to highlight that he's got to sort of devour, all of these creatures down there and sort of like, progress to the top of the food chain. So that's specifically why he doesn't have healing potions. But generally, there are healing potions in the game. He'll get them eventually as well, and but they're just limited.
I see.
Very limited healing.
And you have to ask if that dynamic extends to the magic system, because Paladin's Quest, there was no magic points. Every spell you cast takes hit points.
Right. There is an MP in this, so there is a mana pool. So I didn't carry that over, but there isn't really any healing magic that works on other people. There are spells that do heal yourself, and they are they have various restrictions on them. So, for instance, there's on Capella's game, there's a character that has a healing spell that just gets less effective every time you use it per battle. There is a healing spell later that uses your hunger gauge as you build your hunger gauge up. So there's a healing spell called Metabolize that lets you like tap into that for the in combat instead of just waiting for after combat to get healed by it. So there is some healing magic, but again, it's like super limited. And then the only exception to that is characters that can use a specific branch of magic called Magic of the Stars, and Capella is the only character that has that. So she very specifically can heal other people. So it's, since there are 4 different characters, you're not going to be able to have a healer that can, like a dedicated healer like that on every game.
Right. And since it's something that can't really be or isn't in the demo here, what's the multi-character team up setup going to be like? Like, is that innate selfishness going to play out in terms of character interactions?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. So, like Paladin's Quest, there are you get all of your characters, or the majority of your characters are just mercenaries. So you have to hire them. You don't just like get them because you share. You want to save the world together or anything like that. I tried to take that idea further, and so in addition to being like, you have to generally pay these people, or they want something from you, right? They'll also, over the course of the game, certain moments will arise where, maybe a character is going to like double cross you or something because it suits them. So, I mean, like a few instances of this, there's a couple of characters who are basically paid assassins, and whenever you kill a boss with them, that's sort of like they'll count that as like their job being over, and then they will charge you again if you want to keep them on your party. So, they'll continually, and their price will continually go up as they level. Or there's one character who just kind of steals from you on the sly, and will eventually just, once he sort of gets enough money, will just leave your party. There's a lot of other, or there's a moment where someone basically notices like a famous mercenary that's in your party and just offers them more money. And if you can't match it, they will fight you. So there are lots of instances of those kinds of things over the course of the game.
That's certainly a fresh dynamic in terms of role-playing games. Like, I am curious to see how it will play out in full. Like, let me see here. So, is this game being built in RPG Maker?
No, it's being made in Game Maker. So I really wanted to get away from RPG Maker. I like the engine, like in terms of its like ease of use and everything. But you just like as you work into it, work with it, you sort of like run into the edges of it more and more. And one of the things I really wanted was like honest to God hit detection. Like it's RPG Maker just doesn't do it well. It's all tile based, and or the movement is all tile based. So being able to actually have like hit detection opens up, a world of possibilities outside of combat. So you'll notice that the movement and everything is a bit more similar to like Chrono Trigger, where it's omnidirectional and pixel based movement, and you can unlike Chrono Trigger, you can like swing your weapon, and if you hit an enemy on the field by swinging your weapon, it'll give you like an advantage in combat and initiative. So I wanted to get the hell away from that.
Mm-hmm.
It consists of 4 people, so it's pretty small. It's me. I do the music, the design, the writing, the mapping. I like, and then just basic like every odd job imaginable. And then my friend Jason, who is like I went in this with, he's like my business partner as well. He's doing the coding, and then we have 2 artists, and their monikers are Cubesona and Inoceran. And Cubesona is the lead design, is basically handles most of the pixel art, and I chip in here and there, but I mean he does the vast majority of it. And then he is also just the lead artist, so I mean with a lot of the designs and stuff, he's handling that. And then Inoceran is just doing animations.
And at what state of development is him at this point? Because I know you mentioned that it's kind of on the back burner while you update Jimmy and the pulsating mass. But I'm wondering how much work was completed before the switchover occurred.
Right. Well, I mean, I'm working on that now. It's like hopefully this is just like a two month. It might bleed over into a 3rd month, but little time investment. But the rest of the team is still working on it, so it's not like we've stopped production or anything. So a lot of stuff is taken care of already. Like this game has been worked on for about I'd say like 4 to 4.5 years. But the work that's been done on it, a lot of it has been kind of like just me solo, and then Jason building up the code base for it. Sort of after like in the 2nd or 3rd year of development, he came in, and then we also got the Cubesona came in about a year and a half ago. So I think maybe 2 years, but it's been so that time it wasn't everyone working full time on it. So that was kind of a slow crawl. And I mean, during that time we got I handled all the writing's done, all the music's done, all the design is like figured out, all the maps have been like mapped out but not actually like put into the editor yet. Like all that was done probably like a couple years ago at this point. So that what's actually in the editor now, it's like we need a lot of art assets, because that's essentially, we just got the money to really make that happen, and we've been art has been produced for it, but we're, in terms of like overall where we're at, is actually like pretty early in the process, in terms of like actually the levels actually being built out and stuff. So it's a big game is part of the reason why. I think there's somewhere around like 100 levels, so we're probably level wise at like 5% or something. It's pretty early in the process, but the more you it sort of it goes quicker the more you get done, because you can reuse assets and that kind of thing. Like, I mean, you don't need to have 20 different variants of like snowy mountains, for instance. So that's that kind of thing. It's like it will build up momentum as it goes. But yeah, I would say we probably have another 3 years of development left.
That's not surprising. Like, given the ambition on display here, and like we just have so many people on this program who spend about that much time building a game.
Mm-hmm.
Some people just don't realize how long it takes to make a game nowadays.
Yeah. Even small indie games, unless you're keeping things really simple, can take literal years.
Yeah. Well, like, so for instance, like Jimmy took me, I had about a 4.5 year long development cycle, which is actually, considering the size of the game, because I mean, it's a solid like 40 to 50 hours. And that's not like, that experience isn't drawn out. Like, so that took me 4.5 years. And I was able to, cut a lot of corners by having like a really simplistic art style, and so I was able to, and using RPG Maker, that cut out enough to where I was like, I can handle the scope of this. But yeah, like, this game is like, probably going to be a longer game than that. And having art assets that are like not stuff that you just like crank out, that takes a hell of a lot of time.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, this doesn't look like something you can exactly go, trot over to like the asset store and be like, yeah, I want these certain obscure models. Like, nah, dog, you need to make those.
Right.
Yeah. Like, and what are you doing in terms of music?
The music's done. So I would say that's other than writing is my biggest strength. So I did. It's got about 90 songs. I did the full soundtrack. A few years ago.
Unexpected, if only because most game developers we get on the program, they tend to not be music focused.
Yeah. I'm sort of like I feel like I'm an anomaly in the field, because I feel like a lot of people come at it from either being from like a coding background, or from like a visual art background, and those are like the two things I'm worst at. Like I came at it from a writing and a music background, so on the plus side, that saves me money. I don't have to pay for a composer. But yeah, like the drawback of that is like, yeah, I have to buy a lot of art, and I need someone to code if I'm going to work outside of something that's like simplistic enough, like RPG Maker, that I could just do it myself.
Like, I suppose it evens out, so to speak. Whereas usually it's the reverse. Like the developers really good with the art assets, they either have to buy the music or can mission it or get some royalty free stuff.
Yeah, it's also, it's nice to I mean, like my background, like I said, it's in music and writing, like so maybe this is more important for me, but being able to like use music like in terms of like as another sort of like just like avenue of writing, like and have it fit with the writing, and have the music be meaningful, is something that I like try to do where I can. I mean, sometimes music is just atmosphere, and and a group.
Have you ever tried to do something with that in terms of like the gameplay? Something rhythm based, basically.
That's not really where my like like what I want to do like professionally. Like I do get that. That would be like I think that would be like a fun thing to do, like for sure. But I don't think it. But in terms of like what I want to like accomplish with my game dev, it's not. It's just not something that's on my radar.
Fair enough. You know, it's like there's no obligation to go in that direction.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
especially if you don't want to.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's not that I like specific. I mean, I guess I don't super want to, but you know, it's not that I wouldn't do it. It's just that like, you know, I mean, when you sort of like, I really like big beefy game RPGs, right? Like that's what I like want to make. And when you go into making one of those, it's like, okay, this is going to be a huge commitment, and unless I, you know, I mean, if this game does well, you know, maybe I can have like, you know, full-time team and like a larger team and from the get-go, and the turnaround will be better. But, you know, now I'm like, okay, I have to commit 5+ years of my life to this. So something like a rhythm-based combat system or something would be something that like if I could just like make game like little short forum games or something, right, where I only had like for game jams or whatever, and I was like dealing with like a 1 month turnaround, I would experiment with that shit all the time. But I'm just like at a point where it's like, okay, I have to commit to this. So, you know, that's like there might be a point where I come up with where I have a story idea that like synergizes with that mechanic really well, and I'll pursue it. But just right now, you know, that's just not what's inspiring me.
Okay, and perhaps it's a bit very early to ask this particular question, but have you gotten any sort of beat on what this game is going to cost when it comes out?
Yeah, I mean, you know, I don't know. The market could crash, and then you know things could change, I guess. But we're planning on going for about 30, I think. That's the price point that we're shooting for. But you know, I mean, we'll know closer to the you know date if that's going to change.
Mm-hmm. And let's see. I think I've run through all of my questions. Guys, do you have anything further to add?
I think I'm good.
I think you've asked everything I had.
Okay. So I want to thank you, Kasey, for being with us here today and, you know, telling us all about your games. The demo was brief, but I was intrigued with what I played so far, and I look forward to this, how it shapes up in the years ahead. And maybe we'll have you on somewhere down the line as it, you know, becomes more full-bodied. In the meantime, the game is Hymn of the Earless God. You can wishlist it on Steam. And Kasey's first game, Jimmy and the Pulsating Mask, is available on Steam right now for $14.99. So if you wish, you can go and pick that up today. Betty, play us to the next segment. All right. So, welcome to the topic of discussion for the week. So, we had quite a pick of games whose round number anniversaries have come up, or, you know, a factor of 5. You know, the really big anniversaries like SimCity 2000's 30th just hit this year, or Half-Life has turned 25. Really, the entire 1998 year of gaming has turned 25, and you know that's a whole list of heavy hitters. You know, and games from 2003 are 20 years old, and that's where we landed.
Pretty sure that's illegal.
What is?
Things from 2003 being 20 years old.
I'm like, take it up with the linear nature of time. Like,
I keep trying to, but nobody will give me their phone number.
Boo.
Unfortunate. Anyway, point is, we arrived at Prince of Persia: The Sands of Time, like, which indeed, as of this month, I believe, has turned 20 years old. Let's see, that was early in November, because it's that and Beyond Good and Evil that hit at about the same time.
Don't they
In
share
fact, this
an
is
engine?
yeah. Yeah, in fact, that was a bone of contention for people who really gravitated towards Beyond Good and Evil, because if you want to chart like Prince of Persia was really successful and spawned a whole range of sequels that are, still happening. In fact, we got a new Prince of Persia game, or is that still in development? I genuinely
I don't think it's out yet, or if it did,
Yeah, it's like,
came out softly and then with a thud on the ground.
yeah, I'm like, I think that's coming out in January. I haven't checked, but my point is, they're still making Prince of Persia games. It's taken forever and a day for Beyond Good and Evil to get a sequel, and even that's not a certain thing. But
Wasn't it supposed to come out like 2 years ago and then just nothing?
we'll talk more about that next year, because Beyond Good and Evil is getting a 20th anniversary edition. Just got announced today after getting leaked. But this is about Prince of Persia: The Sands of Time, or as I like to call it, Prince of Persia finally becomes good. Maybe this is a hot take. I don't care. Because, and I do have experience with at least the first Prince of Persia game.
I guess for the young kids in the room, Prince of Persia: Sands of Time was not the first Prince of Persia game. Prince of Persia's been around since 80s?
Yeah, the old ones had some very interesting things, like using rotoscoped character sprites and stuff for some really clever animation and design for the time period, but they also were really slow and required really deliberate platforming and stuff, which is definitely not fun for everybody.
That wasn't the big problem with Prince of Persia, or Prince of Persia 2 for that matter. It's the time limit.
That too. You had to be deliberate, but still also,
Yeah, because
timely.
Because Prince of Persia played out in one real timeout. Like, you had unlimited lives, I think, or no, or you could save anywhere. Point is, like, your biggest obstacle wasn't necessarily the traps or the guards or anything like that. It's that hard time limit, and it's actually really, really hard to overcome that time limit. Like, even speed runs of the game are not all that speedy. If that makes any sense.
For a game from that, especially for a game from that era, this is like around the same time as like some of the Super Mario Brothers and shit, where a lot of those games, admittedly, some of this is because of programming holes, but they have speed runs in the like 10 minutes range or less.
Indeed. But yeah, just in general, Prince of Persia is definitely a game that was born out of the limitations of the PC or the Apple II, or whatever computer platform that was initially developed for. I mean, given it's Jordan Mechner, I can't discount that it was originally developed for the Apple II, or the Apple II GS, something like that, and then ported to like DOS and Amiga and what have you. Anyway,
the Copy 286.
sure. But Prince of Persia: The Sands of Time, it's an interesting beast in terms of applying the principles of Prince of Persia, but making it not suck, or more accessible, depending on how you want to frame it. Because, so who here has played Sands of Time?
I've played some.
Okay.
Not me.
I played the original Prince of Persia, but not Sands of Time.
Yeah. I have played Prince of Persia to completion. I played a bit of it this past week just to refresh myself with the mechanics. And it's still a game that holds up. It's just the PC port is probably not the way you really want to play it. Because, it comes from 2003, and thus it doesn't really have... Yeah, it has controller support, but it's a very generalized controller support. And, even an Xbox 360 controller, it's not going to necessarily read, because that came out a good 3-4 years before Xbox 360 support was really standardized on PC.
Mm-hmm.
So if you can get a controller working with the game, that's the optimal way to play. Because let me tell you, playing it with with a keyboard and mouse, it's clunky.
Yeah, the mouse acceleration's a bitch.
Yeah, and but for me, it's also the potential placement of all the keys, but mostly that digital control that a keyboard allots you versus an analog stick can be off-putting. Like this, this is a platforming game. It's the kind of game where you really want precision control, and a keyboard offers less of that versus an analog stick. And I'm talking specifically the movement.
Mm-hmm.
In terms of the actual jumping and moving about that you have to do in Prince of Persia: Sands of Time, it's actually fairly competent. That's not the issue. The issue I have more of is with just using a keyboard or, the WAS or whatever.
Well, this game does also have a narratively available and used solution for awkward jumping mishaps.
To a point, I'm like...
It's funny
because you can rewind time, and also if you fuck up so badly that you die, the prince was just being an unreliable narrator because he got caught up in his storytelling.
Yeah, I'm like, yeah, to a point.
I know it's not a perfect solution, but it's better than not having those things.
Well, that's what I'm getting at. Until the end of the game, where you get the Dagger of Time taken away, and then you have to actually, rely on skills.
It's time to get good, homie.
Yeah, it's the portion of the game that I never liked, because
I guess that is kind of a core mechanic that you're suddenly deprived of.
Yeah, I get what they were going for, taking away the safety nets, as your final exam.
Mm-hmm.
But it's it never worked for me, because you've literally spent the entire game with the Dagger of Time, except for the very, very beginning, when it's ultra tutorialized.
I don't even think you're able to die in the early game.
Yeah.
Like before you get the
So-
dagger, I don't think you can actually die there.
Yeah. So it was always a bit of a hard land for me to have it suddenly taken away. Like I said, it's not too much of a detriment because you basically end up at the final save if you need a restart. But and it makes sense narratively because you do literally get the dagger of time taken away. But I don't know. Anyway, in terms of is this game as much of a classic as it's purported to be? I'd say mostly yes. Especially in comparison to like some of its sequels. Like the Warrior Within was very famously derided for the just different tracks it took. But like it did improve upon probably the weakest feature of Sands of Time. And if you don't know, it's the combat. Like the combat isn't bad, but it's at best perfunctory. Like, but I think the biggest problem the combat has is it never changes. Like the combat that you're instituting at the beginning of the game is the same as what you're coming across at the end of the game. There's no real variance. There's no real escalation. There's no real variety to it.
No increasing easy improvement of tools and skills much throughout the course of the game.
No, like really the only change is the addition of the time mechanics. Either the rewind feature, the slow motion feature, or the using the dagger of time as an actual weapon, which will, provided you have enough sand energy, freeze an enemy. And this game version of escalation is like adding more guys to the mix. Like you're facing off against 3 or 4 opponents at a time. And, essentially it's to deal with that. But combat isn't especially difficult either. Outside of the time mechanics, you've got, your basic combo. You've got your block. And the real killer, the dash mechanic. It's basically using the run on walls feature, but in combat. Like you'll run over an enemy, then you'll strike them from behind. That's usually good. That's usually good to break a block. Like I said, combat is not bad. It's very samey.
Yeah, if you want to put a lot of combat in the game, usually you want to have some mechanism for getting better at it throughout the course of the game.
Yeah, like I said, it's definitely something other games got better. It's just where things went awry in some of the sequels, especially like Warrior Within, was more the tone. Like, but we're not talking about Warrior Within. Like, and indeed, as much as I would like to talk more about this, we've kind of hit our limits in terms of time, as we've got to start preparing for MSP.
Mm-hmm.
If you're interested in crew news, we can do that during MSP.
Yeah, I'm like, we'll save it for then. So, yeah, that brings us to the conclusion of another episode of Fragments of Silicon. Coming up on the week ahead, no Friday show this week. just the Wednesday program. And indeed, we do have a new episode of MSP planned for, ostensibly 15 minutes from now, but really about 30 to 45. Especially this week, we'll get into it on there. But anyway, so coming up on the Sunday reviews, we'll be having reviews of Turok 3, Shadow of Oblivion Remastered, Colored Effects, Conflict Craft, and Switchball HD. So until then, I shall wish you good gaming.